Today we're going to talk about Anyrail. Anyrail is a track planning software which you can use to get a basic planning of your layout down before you actually start buying track, sticking it down on the board and then realizing that it's not actually going to work how you want. That's the beauty of using a track planning software program. There's plenty out there, but the one I like and the one that I use is Anyrail. We'll get started. So this one is welcome to Anyrail, where to start. Okay, so we're going to open up the program. This is Anyrail 6. Now this is licensed. You do get a free trial version, but the trial version only limits you to 50 pieces of track. But if you're doing a little bookshelf layout, that's probably enough. Start a new one, so File, New. Okay, and on the Home tab, this tells you a 3D view. It's really not much to look at here. This list of materials and sections is useful for after you've planned your layout as what you're going to need to actually build it. The Show tab, now I was going to talk about this now, but I'll actually do that after we've got some track down, and you'll see why. I'm going to come back to that. Insert we'll talk about in a second. Track libraries, now this is G scale all the way down to Z scale. These are where you're going to find your actual pieces of track, whether you're going to work in HO scale, OO scale, N scale. Object libraries we're going to talk about in the next video, so I won't go through there. User objects we'll also talk about in the next video there. Very importantly, download new items. There's something like 2,740, and these are items that people have created that you can use on your layout. So buildings, roundhouses, viaducts, all that sort of stuff. Okay, but the one we're going to concentrate on at the moment is the Settings tab. Before you start building out your layout, you need to have a look at this tab and make sure that this is going to work for you. So on the left we have our measurement system, whether you're going to work in millimeters, which I've got, centimeters, inches if you're American, or you like working in inches. How many decimal points? I always go to 2 decimal points. Now, the next section here is your work area. Now, work area is not your actual baseboards. I would suggest that the work area is the room that you have to build your layout in. So whether it's the garage, whether it's a bedroom, whether it's the attic that you're in. So what you want to do is say, okay, how much room have I got to build a layout? And for this demonstration, we're going to have a room that's 3 meters long, or 3,000 millimeters. And the room's going to be 2.5 meters wide. And you can see that what that's done has made our work area a little big. Okay, so to change that scale with your mouse, you can either come down here to where it says scale and you can drop that back so you can see what you're working at, or you can hold your control button down and use the wheel on your mouse and you can scroll up and down like that. Okay, so we're going to have it there where we can see it. The grid, you can change the size of your grid, remembering that you're working in millimeters. You can change it to 1 meter, which makes it a big grid, or you can use 100 mil. This is particularly good for lining up the bits of track because it gives you vertical and horizontal lines. It's also good for if you wanted to draw your layout on your baseboard afterwards. Endpoint connection, I would just leave those as defaults. Alerts on flex too long, so this is your Flexi Track, whether it's longer than what the actual piece of track is, and whether the curves are too sharp. Now I've set a minimum radius here of 370, which is just slightly bigger than a Pico radius 1 curve. You get a minimum radius 2, but I'm leaving that one alone. Slopes and tolerances. Slopes is your gradient, and I've set mine to a maximum of 3. I want to know if any of my track is over on a 3% gradient, because your locos are going to struggle getting up it. Auto connect, tick that, and allow mixed rails, tick that too. This is if you're using different brands and everything else. Sometimes you can only get the piece of track that you want a different brand, and this will allow you to actually do that. Okay, snap to grid I'm not going to do. Alright, so what we've done so far using the settings tab is define the work area that we're going to build our layout in. So for me, this is my front room. Okay, now we're going to go to insert. What we're going to look at now is putting in our baseboards. And I'm going to show you two ways of doing it, and I'm going to show you something else that I think you should have done as well. I'm going to put in what's they say here. You can see it says add ruler. So highlight that, click on there, and it gives you a ruler. Defaults to 500. To change that, left click and it will turn green. Go up to your length, and my baseboard is going to be, let's make it 2,400 mil long. So nice big sheet of ply. Click, and that gives the size of your ruler. Now you'll notice that I can line that up with the vertical lines here. Alright, I'm going to put another one in. So we go back to insert, add ruler. I'm going to click. I'm going to change that because my board here is now going to be 1200 wide, and that gives me a ruler there. Now you'll notice this is horizontal. Up here we have a rotate button, and I can rotate that through 90 degrees. Click OK, and that gives me a vertical ruler. So if I pop that there, then you can get some idea of what my baseboard is going to work. Okay, other ways of doing it, the way that I would recommend is add surface. Adding surface, what you'll notice is with that highlighted, left click on the base on the work area, and you'll get a circle and a line that's attached to it. Now I'm going to go my 2.4 meters. You can see why I put that ruler in there now, can't you? To there, click, and you can see what it's doing is it's actually drawing in my baseboard. Click, then over to here, onto this corner down here, click. To finish it off, hold your mouse still and double click, and that will say, okay, I've finished now drawing my surface. Grey and very opaque, so if we left click on the border of that, you can see there's now highlighted with green, and it brings up another tab, Tools. I'm going to change my fill colour because I like working on a nice green background. Who doesn't? Let's face it. And I'm going to change the transparency up here under fill colour. Now if I change that, I can make it a nice lighter shade of green, and I can still see the grid through it, and that is a big plus. Okay. The beauty of using the Insert Surface tab is that if my layout was going to be L-shaped, then what I can do is come down to the edge. You can see how the edge turns sort of like bold if you want. Right click brings up the same little menu as what I have up the top here, and I can go to add point. Now if I do that 4 times, I'll show you why I'm doing this. Add point. Okay. Now if I just zoom in and I left click, see how it turns green? What I can do now is say, alright, I'm going to want an area in my layout that I can walk in and touch the backboard. So now if I bring that down, then you can see that I've now got an L-shaped baseboard. So that's the beauty of using the insert surface. But to undo anything that you've got, up here you've got a back button, so you can take it backwards. And you've got a Control Z button. And you can see those little circles disappearing. Control Z does the same thing as back, and it will take everything out. Now the other way, if you're not very good at using your mouse, is to add a rectangle. No. I want my rectangle, what did we say? 2400, and I want the height to be 1200. Right. Now if I have add rectangle highlighted and click, that'll put a rectangle in, perfect rectangle, the size of my layout. And I can just left click, hold and move that around. Same thing, fill color, green, up the transparency, and I'm back where I was. Okay. So that's two ways of putting your layout baseboard down. We've got to look at laying some track, because that's always a fun part, isn't it? Okay, so we're going to go into track libraries. Like I said, you've got all these different scales here. In options, then you can just quickly over here, you can say, I only ever work in HO scale, so File, Options, Libraries, and you can take out all these other things that I'm not going to work in Z scale. Done. So now you can see that we've narrowed our track libraries down to HO, OO and N. I'm going to go into Pico, because I like Pico. You can see here then it brings up set track code, streamline code, all the different codes of track that Pico make. We're going to keep it very simple. We're going to use set track code 1. And if you left click on that, then it'll shorten it up. And if I do that again, Pico streamline code 100 gives us another track library. What you can do is left click on this one, and if you put it over the top, it'll give you tabs down the bottom here. Alright, so then you can just left click the sizes of these and you make a plot. Up here you have either part number, like we are in Streamline, so SL100 is a piece of Flexi Track, and it'll give you a little brief description here. Streamline code 100 with concrete sleepers. Or you can have description, but I think the part number is much better. You can have smaller track icons. You can just have track icons, but really I think this is how you want it set up. Now you notice I've got all this room left around my layout. So now as I've got the layout planned in the thing, what I can do is I can go back to settings. I can change this to 2000. It's always good to have the work area bigger than your baseboard. I wouldn't take it all back so you're just looking at your baseboard. And you'll see why as we move along. Okay, so I'm going to go into Pico Set Track and we're going to put a simple little loop with a couple of branch lines in. So I'm going to go for ST226, which is a curve radius of 438. And you can see at the end there it says R2, angle of 45 degrees means it's a quarter of a circle. So that's it. You just click, hold your button down and drag it onto your layout baseboard. Now you'll notice that with up here, with the settings, we've got auto connect here, and you'll see why. Okay, so with auto connect, when I bring that closer, you'll find some little blue dots. And once you've got two blue dots there, or one blue dot, means if you let go of your button, it will automatically stick that on the end of the curve. Now it doesn't matter which end you put on, it will still auto connect. See, that's going the other way. Whoops, I put the wrong end of the track on, connected it. So two ways, you can click and you can delete. I'll just do that again. The other thing I can do is say, with that highlighted, bold, it'll turn green, let you know which piece of track you've got. Disconnect, you can take it out and you can reconnect it that way. So two ways of fixing that. Okay, we'll just quickly go and pop another curve on there. Alright, so we've got one beautiful radius 2 curve. If I want to make this a double track layout, not that piece. Selected the wrong piece of track. So click out here, Control Z, and that'll undo it. Okay, 231. I'm going to put another piece of radius 3 curve in. So how do you know when you've got these the right distance apart for clearance? Now, if I zoom in here and I bring both of these, if I highlight, hold my button down, I can move this around and it'll move any piece of track that's connected to it. So if I put it there, they're not going to be, how are they going to be concentric? If I hold Control and wheel my mouse in, what you want is this line to be in that, so both of these are in the same way. You can do that on the ends here as well. See how this is slightly past. I'm going to bring that back so it's on my grid line, and it will hopefully have those in line. If you want to know for sure, insert, add line, click, and if that's like that, then we're pretty good. Double click, okay. Just take that line out, that was just for examples. Okay, so we've got two pieces of track. Now, if I want the same thing up the other end, I could either go and put those little individual pieces of track in, but if I do that, I'm going to end up with a curve that faces the same way. Now I can do one of two things. I can, let's just move you over here for a little bit. I can select that and I can rotate 90 or 180, and that will put my curve up the other way. It's disappeared off the layout base, and that's why you should always have your work area higher or larger than your layout baseboard. Back to where we were. The other way of changing this so it's the right up thing is you can left click here, click and drag, opens up a little select board. Now as I've got all four of those highlighted in green, I can just go flip, and that will turn it around on the spot. Now, I could do the same thing with the inner curve. Hold your control button down on your keyboard, control, click, and as long as you've got that control button down, it'll let you select multiple pieces of track. Now I can go right click on that, I can copy, and then moving away, right click anywhere on the board and paste. Flip, drag, and I've got two semicircles. Now, I can hear you say, but they're not lined up. That's alright. We can line them up. There is various ways that we can do that. This is one thing that Anyrail doesn't have. It doesn't have a place this on the same level. You can add your ruler, or you can use this ruler up here. Oops, I've just added another ruler. Control Z. Control Z is your friend. And this will give you an approximate line up. And then I can do the same with this. Line up to the, roughly to the top. Okay. And you'll move your ruler back out of the way. The other way that you would normally do it though is to keep building your track. Back to our set track, we're going to use a piece of Flexi Track here. And Flexi Track that. We're a little short, so what I can do is pop maybe 335 piece of track on there. Oh, look at that. If you don't move these around too much, then you'll when something goes on, it always goes on horizontal, and you can now see that we've lined that up. Our track hasn't moved, and that's good. We can do the same thing here, to a couple of 204s maybe. Z. I'm going to do that from this end. The reason I'm going to do this though is go to our streamlined and watch this. Okay. So are we happy with our lineups? Probably not really. Just need to bring that this way. And you can get as fussy as you like. I could spend all day lining those up, but I won't. Okay. Flexi Track. Popped in this piece of Flexi Track, and with Flexi Track, we shall talk about it for a second here. You've got endpoints that you can click. You've got these crosses that I'll explain what they are in a moment, and you've got the other endpoint here. So those are the 4 points of the end track. Right click, and I'm just going to drag it down so you can see. That endpoint is turned green. Now what I can do is I can select that endpoint, and I can move it and say I want that bit to connect to there. It says, alright, yep, you can do that. It's turned red because now I've stretched that piece of Flexi Track. It's too long. Remember we had that in our show. Nope, sorry, in our settings it was alert on flex too long, so that's why it's turned red. Okay, now I'm going to take the other end. Come on. Left click, hold it down, and I connect it up there. What that has done is automatically shortened our piece of track here. Right click on it, smooth flex. Zoom out, control wheel. I'm going to highlight that piece of track. I'm going to highlight that piece of track. Right click, copy, paste. And because these curves are concentric, that should match up. Okay. Now I'm going to do just this one. Copy, paste. Sometimes it's quicker to do that than go and find your piece of track that you want over here. Now, I am going to pop in another piece of set track, and I just want to talk about it for a sec. If I grab the ends and make it like that, these crosses here, what these do is they let you bend the track without lengthening it. It kind of like anchors the two endpoints, and then you can make whatever shape you like. Now see how we've got these red lines here? That's because in our settings we had alert on two sharper curves. So that means that that curve here is less than my minimum radius of 370. So I need to kind of make it more gradual, and then I know that at least I've got a chance of the loco making it through those curves. Okay. Right. That's what I just wanted to show you, was what these other two little crosses for. Okay, so we're going to drag him, pop it in there, and smooth the flex. Okay, so now this is always in the way. No matter where you put it, it's always in the way. Alright, go over there. What we have here is two loops of track. Obviously, we're going to want to put a point in. So this is basically the last thing that I'm going to show you today. Got to go into our streamlined track library, and we're going to pick, let's see, we want a electro frog point, and we're going to make this 259. And we're just going to click him onto the layout somewhere at this stage. And we're going to do it as a crossover, so we're going to want a second one too. Alright. What I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect here, and I'm going to move, whoops, no. Excellent. I knew I would do this at some point. Now how the hell do I get this concentric again? First thing is Control Z, and that will take me back to before I clicked on it. To stop that happening, what you do is you right click and you use glue. And what this says to the program is that effectively I don't want you to move any bits of track that are connected to these glued points. It's physically like gluing it down on your layout. Alright, so back to where we were. So I've disconnected here so I can open up my Flex Track. I'm going to do the same here, disconnect. I'm going to open that up too. Okay, now I'm going to pop this one on the end, and you can see that we've got the basis of a crossover done. Now you'll also notice that it's not the same with this one I've got as concentric. That's alright. I can disconnect that there, move him out. I'll bring that in. And because it's been bent, you kind of want to smooth it out. And what I can do is, if I zoom in here, you can go, I've lost my track libraries. At some point I obviously deleted them. Okay, home, open use libraries, and it brings back. Alright, I'm going to zoom in and I am going to do set track. That's fairly close, isn't it? Disconnect. Connect that to there. Copy, paste. So there we have it, a basic crossover. I want to talk to you just briefly about cutting Flex Track. I'm going to disconnect the whole piece. I'm going to move it out, delete, and I am going to bring in a fresh piece of Flex Track. Whoop, you can see that I've lined up that, and here I can say, okay, I'm happy with where my Flex Track is, get my mouse arrow where I want it to be, right click, cut flex here, and it's literally like physically cutting that piece of flex. And I can disconnect, and if I look on that, if you look down the bottom of the screen, it says flex code. This is 326.44 millimeters long. So you will cut that to 326 mil or 327 mil. Then if I put that in there, it matches. We have a little misjunction here, which is kind of interesting. That's because I used a piece of set track here. Alright, so we will disconnect that, take it out, we will delete that, and we will disconnect that and just drag our Flex Track out. Okay, so now what we can do, we've got our measurement, pop that in there, pop that on the end, and now we can remember our piece of Flex Track. Watch this. We can put him in there, him in there. He's so convoluted long, and this is why you should always highlight it, turn it green, and smooth flex. What this does is say, okay, that is a piece of Flex Track, and that is 78.54 mil. What was our set track piece? 79 mil. So there's a difference there of about half a mil, but that was just enough to throw this out. So yeah, 78.5 mil compared to 79 mil, just that half mil. I know, would you worry about it? Depends how fancy you are. Okay, so there we have a basic loop with a crossover, so you can get from one track to the other. Now, let's put a branch line in. So I'm going to disconnect that, move our Flexi Track out, find me a nice curve to that point. I can just pop that on the end there. And I can pop my bit of Flexi Track back in. And there we have it. Ta-da! Okay, then we can get a piece of Flexi Track on the end of there. And we can say, okay, let's just curve him up. Oh no, that's going to be too sharp. So we'll have to bring him down. So if we were putting in a little engine shed or something here, we can put in a little piece of Flexi Track and straight track and say, right, that's where my engine shed's going to be. Okay, can I connect that up with Flexi Track? Yes, I can. Can I get a curve that works? Yep. And there you go. Flexi Track you will use so much. That's all I'm going to cover in this video, because by now you've probably fallen asleep. And next time we'll look at a little bit more with the track working and how to use the show. So that is a brief introduction to Anyrail. Don't forget at the end of the day to save your work. File, save as, and we're going to use this as example. Save.